All right. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Okay, cool. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. And I've got a recording and if anybody wants to speak up and you can't unmute yourself, just send me a message and I can unmute you. And we've got the chat box that's available, so I will kind of monitor that as we go along. But for those of you who weren't here last week, I'll just give a quick welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Mary Schreier. I'm the Autism Supervisor with Community Mental Health for Central Michigan. And we've got some of our team here, our behavior analysts, who are going to take the lead and talk to you guys about instructional control and kind of really dive deep into that today. And we will try to have some room for questions at the end. But feel free to send me a message through the group chat too if you need to, and we can, I can interrupt if we need to as well. And I'm going to go on mute so you guys can get started.
Okay. So you can go ahead and skip this one, Travis. Okay, so today we're going to talk about instructional control. And what is instructional control? Basically, it is a positive working relationship between you and your child or you and your learner. And it's a cooperative relationship, which means that it's not obtained through threats or force or compliance. It's a mutually beneficial relationship of working together. And there are some side effects when we do resort to force or coercion that increases the motivation to escape, which means your child might not want to participate with you, might hurt your relationship with them. The results don't necessarily last, so they might just be very short term. It's also not meeting the function of the behavior. So if a child is acting out and you're trying to get them to do their math homework, you might respond by getting angry and reprimanding and say they hit you, so you put them in timeout. Well, that's not meeting the function because the child was trying to escape the task of doing the homework. So by putting him in timeout, he effectively got what he wanted, which was to escape that task. So it can reinforce those challenging behaviors. It also might lead to new challenging behaviors, such as the hitting or things that you haven't seen before that might actually be worse off. And so there is a way to work with our kids where we don't have to worry about those side effects. And the method is called the 7 steps of instructional control. The first step is showing that you're the one in control. Second step, show the child that you're fun. Show the child that you can be trusted. Step 4 is following directions is to your child's benefit. Step 5, in the beginning, reinforcement is provided after each success. Step 6, demonstrate that you know your child's priorities as well as your own. And step 7 is ignoring instructions or inappropriate behavior will not result in reinforcement. And we're going to go through each of these steps more in depth. Our first step is have control over reinforcement. You are the one in control. Your child does not have free access to something they really want. Take that. Or that they're earning something or doing something to comply with your request to earn time for that iPad. All good things must come through you. So essentially, we're setting up or arranging our environment to where they might be able to see their reinforcer, but they have to go through you to get it. If they can see a puzzle and they're little and they really want it, they have to go through you to get it by either saying help or puzzle or whatever you want them to say, and you give them that reinforcer. So that's step 1.
Hey, Megan, hold on just a second. I'm gonna see if I can adjust the connection here. I'm having a unstable connection. So,
Okay.
okay, go on.
Okay, this is just a little picture, just kind of reassuring that we're the ones, the parents, we're the ones that are in control of the reinforcers. So if you want your minutes earned for technology, here's what you can do to earn those minutes, to earn that time. Exercise, play outside. It's up to you, whatever you really want your child to do to earn the reinforcer.
Now that brings us to step number 2, which is be fun. Show the child that you are fun. Make each interaction you have with them an enjoyable experience so that they will want to follow your directions to earn more time sharing these experiences with you. So it can be really tough to be a good teacher to a child who has autism or an individual who has other behavioral or emotional diagnosis if we can't be fun with them. If we can't enter in their world of enjoyment and really relate to the things they love, it's tough. So you see step 2, be fun. You know, it seems kind of simple and maybe something we can gloss over, but it actually is a very important step to building instructional control with our children. So there's 2 main goals for step 2. Number 1 is to pair yourself with the child and their reinforcers. And after pairing, the goal is that the child finds it valuable and fun to be with their teacher or their parent. So you heard that word pairing. What is it? So basically, the child must associate the teacher and the parent with good things happening. In other words, pair yourself or associate yourself with reinforcement. And then you in turn become a reinforcer to the child. So basically what that means is when the child sees his mom, dad, teacher, you know, that he associates that person with a lot of good things happening, a lot of enjoyable experiences. It's somebody that they want to be around. Pairing is really the first component to good teaching. I like to think of before any instructions are given, any task are placed on the child, the process of pairing needed to occur first. So how do you work on pairing with your child? Number 1, you're the giver of all good things. Megan touched on this a little bit, but be the one to give them the things they love. This can be toys, activities, tickles, squeezes, verbal praise, and much more. I like to remind people though that it could be none of those things. We really got to kind of be specific and pairing with what the child really likes. So for example, I had a child who I used to work with. On my first day with him, I set up my room with like Play-Doh and bubbles and all these cool things I thought, but he didn't like any of those things. He definitely didn't like tickles and squeezes. He loved numbers and he loved putting numbers in order. And I found that out pretty quickly when I was working with him. So I grabbed a stack of Post-it notes and I wrote 1 on it, the first Post-it note. And he came up to me and asked for 1 and I gave it to him. And then I would write 2 down. And then he'd come and get 2. And that was just a really good opportunity for me to be the giver of good things to him. Remember step 1 though, if the child has free access to all those favorite items and activities, then the opportunity to be a giver of good things is lost. So with that kid that liked the numbers, if I just would have handed him all those Post-it notes at once, I would have lost that opportunity to be a giver of good things, and the pairing process would have been affected a little bit. Next, you want to be involved in your child's enjoyment of their favorite toys, games, and activities. This looks like playing side by side, getting down on their level. It involves narrating and imitating and reinforcing their actions during play. So if you have a daughter who loves horses like I do, that would involve getting down on the floor with her and getting my own horse and imitating what she's doing and narrating, hey, we're going to the barn to get some hay. You're pretty silly during this time. And you're really reinforcing all of the functional play that she's doing that you like. I also added be creative, and I added a picture of a trampoline there. That's my daughter's go-to right now is trampolines. But to be honest, there's days when my lower back is just killing me and I can't get up. I don't feel like getting up there with her. So I got to be creative. I'll be on the side in the grass, pretending to be a bear, trying to get her, or throwing a ball to her while she's jumping. So sometimes we just got to be really creative and figure out what works best for both parties. And the goal is to make your child's favorite activities even more fun with you involved. During this pairing process, we want to limit as much as possible the amount of demands put on the child. So this includes typically inadvertent phrases such as stop, come here, look at me. You should be following your child's motivation rather than them following your directions. Do what they want to do, make it all about them. And once we've successfully paired with the child, then we can slowly begin to introduce some demands and some tasks. So how do you know you've successfully paired with a child? Number one, there's increase in attending, increase in eye contact, a decrease in inappropriate behaviors. This next one is one I look at big time, is follows you versus you following them. So when I'm starting with a kid in the center, let's say, and I start to see him gravitating towards me and really following me around, really interested in the things I have, that's a really good sign, versus the alternative, which is me following him everywhere, trying to engage him. So that's a big one I look at, is follows you versus you following them. And then you'll also start to see some cooperation with simple demands that they've been introduced. The last point for step number 2 is that pairing never ends. So once you've determined that you are sufficiently paired with your learner, you don't stop pairing. You want to pair at the top of your day, at the beginning of your day, pair before task demands, pair towards the end of your day. In other words, we're embedding pairing into all of our day with the child. So that brings us to step 3. We're successfully paired. The child loves being around us. He's gravitating towards us. He knows when he's around us, a lot of fun things, enjoyable experiences happen. So now we're going to start to introduce some instructions. And we really want to follow through with those instructions, which is step 3. So show the child that you can be trusted and always say what you mean and mean what you say. If you say your child should do something, you don't allow them access to reinforce it until it has been acceptably completed. You know, I'm definitely not 100% perfect in this area in my life. Sometimes we give an instruction to a child and they ignore it or they escape, and to go about our day and move on with the things we got to do, we let that instruction pretty much fall to the ground and becomes meaningless. So step 3 is just really focusing on following through with the instructions we give. In giving instructions, we want to consider our choice of words really carefully. Questions versus direct statements. A lot of times we have the tendency to put an instruction in the form of a question. Can you sit down? And the child may say no, and that's not an inappropriate response. That's really good functional communication. So we just really focus on putting it into a direct statement. So sit down, please. And then using specific, clear language when instructing your child. So I thought of the example of do some homework, and you come back and your child's done one problem of homework, and they followed the instruction, they did some homework. So the alternative would be more specific and clear, like, I want you to do problems 1 through 10 right now. So just using that specific language. The 70-25 rule is something to really think about when we start to place instructions on our children. So that really what this means is the majority of our interactions with the child should still focus on pairing. But now we're giving some instructions to the child. So 75% is that pairing that we talked about, and 25% is we're slipping in instructions to the child, slipping in a new way to play with a toy or different expectations. This increases the likelihood that the learner will choose to engage with you and comply with your directions. So this brings me to a metaphor that Robert Schramm uses. He's the one who wrote the book on 7 steps of instructional control. And he uses the metaphor oasis versus desert. And really what he's trying to portray here is that oasis there that you see, that is the time when the child is with the parent, with the teacher, and that is the teaching environment. That's where all that pairing is happening, all that good things, we're giving them good things. The time we're playing with them is an enjoyable experience. It's just a really good place, fun place to be. Sure, there may be a few instructions given, but it's worth it to follow those instructions and stay in the oasis because they're gaining access to all these great things. The alternative would be to escape that teaching setting, the oasis, into a desert where nothing ever really good happens. So pretty much he's trying to create the dynamic. We're trying to create the dynamic in our teaching was where the child chooses to be in that teaching setting, in that oasis, and following instructions and being with us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this video, and I'm going to keep it on mute because it's in German and there's a lot going on. And I'm going to explain the video using that oasis versus desert metaphor, and also kind of touching on some of the steps we talked about. A little bit of background with this child here. He has not drank anything except chocolate milk in the last 2 years. And the goal is that this teacher here is trying to get him to take a sip of the water in the red cup. Any medical diagnosis that would inhibit him from drinking water has been ruled out. He's just escaping it when they put the instruction on him. So it's been 2 years since he's drank water. So right now the teacher is in the process of pairing. This kid really loves puzzles. She's making this time an enjoyable experience. So what she's doing is she's giving him 3 pieces of the puzzle. And before she gives him that 4th piece, she's going to instruct him to take a sip of water. So here she goes. And he's not ready to do that. She's not allowing that instruction to fall to the ground, like we talked about. So now she begins to withhold the reinforcement. As you can see, he's not very happy. Pushes the chair over. And I really like this video because it shows you that nothing ever happens perfectly smooth. It's in the perfect world, he would have took a sip on that first try and all would have been well, but that's not typically how it works, especially it's been 2 years since he's drank water. So he hasn't left that oasis we talked about completely yet. He's still sticking around, knows there's a lot of cool things here. He's still interested in what she's got, interested in being around. So he's came back to the table, and pretty much what she's doing right now is she's allowing some access to the reinforcers, but not complete control. And that's something that Megan talked about, is having control of the reinforcers. So she's going to give him a piece of the puzzle. She's going to get him to 3 pieces. And before he gets access to that 4th piece, she's going to instruct him to take a sip again. He identifies he wants a puzzle piece. Right here. Before he gets it, take a sip. Nice, clear, direct instruction. He is still not ready. I'm surprised he doesn't throw that water in her face right there. And now you'll see she's not allowing that instruction to fall to the ground. She's following through. I told you to take a sip, so you're not allowed access to the puzzle anymore. And now he's really upset. So now he's escaped to the desert like we talked about, and he's out there by himself except for the camera in his face. And it's really important to remember step one here that Megan talked about, that control of the reinforcement. If he would have escaped here and went and played with his own puzzle, then this would be absolutely pointless. But you can see they did a great job of controlling the environment, and where he can't go and play with his iPad right now or play with another puzzle. He's pretty much got to just wait in the desert. So as you can see, 10 minutes have passed, and when you're in it, going through this as a teacher or parent, it can feel like an hour. It takes a while. But the teachers right now are doing a great job of really enticing that Oasis. The great things they got. They're talking about all the fun things they've got. He's, all right, I'm done with this desert. That wasn't that fun. I'm coming back to the Oasis. He's showing some interest again. Another 2 minutes have passed, and he's back with the teachers, and they've got some new things here, and he's showing a lot of interest, but you can see they're not allowing complete control of those reinforcers. So they're not allowing him to take it. He's touching it and feeling it, but they're not letting him have that complete control. So she's asking him to take a sip. He's still not ready. I really like this part right here. He's, I'm going back to the desert. Maybe not. That wasn't that fun. I'll stick here. All right, here comes the moment. His first sip of water in 2 years. He takes a sip. Great job. Access to the reinforcement. High fives, tickles, laughs. Good job, buddy. You did it. Awesome work. I'm going to play the video just a little bit long here because I want to point out something the teachers do. So the teacher does a really good job of giving him some time with this stuff he just earned. So she's giving us some time. He's got access to these enjoyable things. Remember that 75-25 rule I talked about. So 75% of the time is that pairing and enjoyable experience. And only 25% is when we're putting in instructions on the child. So he's getting this fun time that he earned. In previous ABA programs, they worked on sharing and turn taking. So she said my turn, and he did a good job of sharing. He identifies that he wants the spinner toy again. She instructs him to take a sip. He does it way easier this time, gets it done. And I just really like this video a lot because you can see there's no forced cooperation, and that would be really ugly trying to force a child to take a sip of water. I mean, they would spit it out. It just would not go well. There's no nagging procedure going on where she's like, take a sip, take a sip, take a sip. The teachers stayed calm. They set up the environment to where the child chose to come back to that learning environment, come back to that Oasis, follow the instruction to get access to these fun things. And I just really like this teaching style, and I thought the teachers did a great job here. With that, I'm going to take it a step forward for Sarah.
All right, next we're going to talk about putting the focus on positive reinforcement. And that would also be rather than negative reinforcement. And when we talk about using reinforcement, you really know you have a reinforcer when the behavior you're looking to increase actually does increase. Then you know you found a strong reinforcer. So an example of a positive reinforcement that I've used with my daughter, when she learned how to unbuckle her car seat on her own, I knew I had to think of an intervention, and very quickly. So I found some peanut butter M&Ms, and I told her, when we get to where we're going, if you stay buckled, you can have an M&M. And that piqued her interest. And so we started out, and she would unbuckle a couple of times. We get to where we're going. Sorry, you can't have the M&M. You didn't stay buckled. But then once she started realizing that when she did stay buckled, she got the M&M, that's when we saw the unbuckling decrease and staying buckled increased. So I knew I'd found a positive reinforcer then, and I still continue to use it because it's a small price to pay for her safety. So that's an an example of positive reinforcement. What I want to stay away from is negative reinforcement, and that would be with the same example. My daughter likes to listen to the Frozen soundtrack, so if we got in the car and I turned the radio on, okay, we're going to listen to this music. If you unbuckle, we're going to turn it off. And that would be an example of negative reinforcement. And we want to stay away from negative reinforcement because sometimes that can lead to a power struggle and more frustration. And we want to keep this positive learning environment going. Just the same with pairing. We want to just keep this rolling so you're giving good things, not taking the fun things away. So just a good way to remember positive rather than negative reinforcement is positive, you're just adding to the situation, and negative, you'd be taking it away. So a plus with positive reinforcement is that the teacher maintains control in this environment. And then also a big part of this is you want to catch the child being good. So we're driving in the car. Hey, I love how you're staying buckled. Nice job. You're working toward getting your M&M. So really reinforcing that rather than only showing her attention. Hey, you need to keep that buckle fastened. So another aspect of step 4 is when we using first then language, and that is on the next slide. So you want to build skills with reinforcement. A lot of times you can use this just simply with, okay, first stay buckled, then you can have an M&M. First clean up the living room, and then we can start movie night. By keeping language simple, it really helps clarify what you're expecting, like what Travis had talked about. Let's see. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, step 5, begin by reinforcing after each success. So in Travis's video, when the child first took that sip of water, that's a lot of reinforcement. That was a huge, huge thing for him to accomplish. And then next time he takes a drink, the family's going to want to provide reinforcement again. Once he's consistently taking that drink of water is when you'll start to fade a little bit. So basically you might provide reinforcement after every 2 times he takes a drink, or if he takes a little bit bigger of a sip than he was before. If you're working on math homework, say it's tough to get them to even sit down sometimes. Lots of reinforcement for sitting down. Right now, my daughter, I'll be totally honest, we can maybe get through like 3 math problems before it's chaos. So right now, she's receiving reinforcement after each problem. We had to get creative with the trampoline actually, because that's the only thing I found that worked. If I jump on the trampoline with her for 5 minutes or so, she'll run, and she's running to do her math problem. It's not me having to drag her to do it. It's, hey, I want to do this because it's fun to jump on the trampoline with mom. And if I can do my math homework and she'll come outside with me, she's asking me where her homework is now, but not to, we still have a lot of work to do on that one. So I think it's quite common to struggle with homework. And the kind of like the last point in this slide says your child will come looking to you for an instruction because that's the first step in getting access to what they want. And you're that giver of good things. I kind of already went through this example. Yeah, okay. Once your child has learned that positive behavior choices consistently result in positive rewards, that's when you'll start to move to every 2 responses before reinforcement, and then maybe 3 responses. And it kind of depends. There's days where one of my daughters is feeling like a little bit sick, or she just has so much extra energy. And so you really have to base it on, man, if I can get like 1 problem out of her, this is great. I'm not even going to try for the 2 or 3 that I usually get. Let's just take it easy, because it's a lot easier to prevent asking too much of your child than if you give that demand and your child doesn't want to comply, that's a lot more difficult to try to back up. And I did want to just mention that if you go too quickly, so for example, the boy that sipped the water, if he took a sip of water and right away mom didn't provide that reinforcer, he could really result in some pretty serious challenging behaviors. So just be very cautious of how you are reinforcing the behavior.
All right, that takes us to step 6, and that's prioritizing. This has to do with the reinforcers that we had talked about. So you want to have reinforcers available, and also you want to have a variety of reinforcement. What can be tricky is some kids have very limited reinforcers. Say they only want to watch YouTube on the iPad and really have no interest in peers or engaging in other activities. So one important thing is to increase their reinforcers, and a way that you can do that is look at their highest preferred reinforcer. So say music on YouTube, and consider what is the attributes of that they appreciate. So YouTube, you might say they like listening to songs. So then you might say, okay, we can play the iPad on YouTube, but we're going to also use that music to play musical chairs, say with brother or sister or a couple peers. Then you can start adding more social games like musical chairs, duck, duck, goose, as you're increasing their reinforcers. Some other examples would be, I have a young friend I worked with who really likes finger puppets. So what I might think, okay, so he likes what's going on his fingers, that's reinforcing. What other things can we put on his finger? Well, maybe we could play with some Play-Doh and he might enjoy feeling that in his hands. Or maybe we could bring in hand puppets, a little bit different, but that would broaden the reinforcers that we could use. And having a variety helps to keep the momentum going and teaching so they don't get burned out on just one reinforcer. And then also you want to prioritize for yourself. So as the teacher or the parent, you can look at what is it that the target skill that you want to work on. So say you're working on increasing language skills. You don't necessarily want to focus on every aspect of language, say manners and acquisition and a lengthy sentence. So rather than just saying, say chips, and the learner says chip, we want to reinforce that right now, rather than saying, say, could I have some chips now? Because then by just saying chip, we can reinforce much more quickly and have much higher success and easily shape into longer requests.
Okay, step 7. This is definitely the toughest step. When a child does not respond to your instructions, they should not receive reinforcement. So just like the little boy in the video, when he did not comply with the request to drink the water, he did not get to stay with his reinforcer, the puzzle pieces. But it's not just that, it's any form of reinforcement. When he went and he laid on the ground, he wasn't trying to access anything else. But if he had been, and we'll see this in some videos coming up, we're going to want to block that access. So making sure that you have that control over his reinforcers. If you have to turn off the internet, and there might be some behaviors from that. And so the second point on the slide, you can see the child engages in challenging behavior because it serves a function. It's working for them. For some reason, that behavior that little boy did of screaming, it was reinforced in the past, which truthfully, if your little kid is screaming and it's tough some days just to survive, it's very, very, very tough. It's a tough step. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so here's an example of what the child will learn. So this instruction is to read for 5 minutes. So he can sit and read for 5 minutes, and that equals he can play 1 game on the iPad. But what happens if he doesn't sit down, or he throws the book, he doesn't read, he doesn't get the iPad? So you're controlling your environment, you're not controlling the child. You are trying to make the environment more suitable for learning. Go ahead and go to that next. Okay, so this is just explaining when your child is trying to go for other reinforcement, you're going to want to block the access to that. Go ahead and go to that next one. Okay, so here's some videos, and we can kind of see there's one with the littler kid and then one with a little bit older child. Go ahead and thanks, Travis.
If he wants to get up, he should be allowed to get up, but then you just take the toy back and say, oh, you can leave, but the toy stays with me, so what do you want to do? And then when he chooses to sit back down, now he's made the choice. Okay, take the toy, okay. Now tell him if you want to play, you have to sit.
Sit down, sit, 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 sit.
Good job, now you can play. You see, now he's not going to be pulling away from you the whole time. Now he's made the choice to sit because you restricted the reinforcement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The last thing I want you guys doing is pulling him in. Let's see if he tries it again. Okay, take the toy back again. Okay, you can get up if you want. Oh, you want to stay?
Stay? Oh, good. Good job.
Hey, Trav, you can go ahead to the next video.
Yeah, he's clapping.
Some cool toys. Ooh, an airplane. Oh, that has to stay here. You can go away, but this needs to stay over here. Thanks. Crash. Oh no, I crashed. Ooh, I found a man. Let's see what else is it. Ooh, a tractor. Oh, we have to leave it over here. Oh, did you want to play with this? We can play with this, but we have to bring it over here. There we go. Oh, I'm going to play with the tractor on here. Oh my goodness. Oh,
So far, they're just pairing. She's trying to play with her, find what she likes, and now she's about to give an instruction.
check out this book real quick. Ooh, we're playing with cars, and there's a car in the book. Let's touch the car. You can play with that, but you need to look at the book first. We have to find the car. We have to find the car first.
So the instruction is giving the car, and she blocked reinforcement to, and she followed the instruction, and now, hey, go get what you wanted. Let's find that toy. Okay. You go ahead and, okay, so here's what we want to really be cautious of, an extinction burst. So when an individual learns that their behavior is no longer working, they will start to have typically an extinction burst. And I like to use the comparison of a vending machine for this. So you put your money in and you get your candy, but one time your candy doesn't come out, it gets stuck. So what do? You start to kick the machine, some people, or shake it, yell. Well, it's still not working if your candy's still not coming out, and eventually you're just gonna give up. You're gonna realize that that kicking and yelling and nothing's happening to get you that candy, and therefore not worth it. It's too much work to do. And so you might see that with some children. And I have a little note on here for caution, because sometimes extinction bursts can be pretty serious. There could be some pretty aggressive behavior, so we definitely recommend, if you're able to, consult with a professional, such as a BCBA board certified behavior analyst, who work with you through this. It can be quite a challenge, but Go ahead to the next page. It's smooth sailing after you see that the child sees that you are not going to reinforce that behavior anymore. Kicking, yelling, fighting, not following your instructions, it's just not effective. It's not going to work for them. It's a little bit of a tough process, especially if your child has been had the same behavioral repertoire for many years, but it's most certainly doable for everyone. And we're here to support you along the way with questions or any other discussions you guys would like to have. There are some things you can do besides the 7 steps in the future, just to kind of set up your environment for more positive behavior. And so you could make the instructions easier to understand. You could reduce or change the task demand. So maybe if you ask a child to take a bite of macaroni, and he's screaming and fighting, and he gets up and he throws the macaroni, and you say, pick up a noodle. Well, maybe even if he picks up 1 noodle, that's an accomplishment. He followed your instructions. Maybe you don't have to have him pick up the entire mess, depending on the child. So that's an option. Shorten the duration of that activity, maybe asking a little bit less of them some days. And some days just be fun. Hey, we have math today, but let's have fun for a while. What do you want to do? Let's play for a while, and then we'll get to this later. Choices, make the activity more interesting. I work with a little boy that loves fossils. He does not like math. And so we started incorporating fossils into math. So you have 3 of your rocks plus 3 of your other rocks equals 6, and he's loving it now. First, then, that's a very basic statement of first homework, then iPad, or first take a drink, like in the video Travis played, then the puzzle piece. Removing distractors if there's too much around, so your child can easily just go play with something else and ignore your instructions, then they're probably going to do so. So making sure that you're doing what we call sanitizing the environment, ensuring sufficient sleep and good breakfast, and then telling your child what to do, not what not to do. And Sarah mentioned this also. Instead of saying, don't buckle your seatbelt to her daughter, she said, okay, keep your seatbelt buckled, and then would give the M&M if she did that. So the child is always hearing what they can do instead. And there's some other ways that if anyone's interested, we're talking about having a discussion on antecedent interventions like that in the future. So.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So do we have anybody with questions or comments or anything?
Yeah, I have some questions and some comments.
Okay. Cool.
I took some of what I wanted to work on from last week and did it the best I could throughout the week. And
Excellent.
I'm finding that when I am reinforcing the positive statements, I end up having a bigger problem. This is an example. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I always leave the door open so I can hear everything. And I told my son I was proud of him for doing something, and I do believe it was because he wasn't spilling his drink. And then he turned around and spilled his drink anyway. And so I had to stop what I was doing, obviously, which, it can be an issue. But so I talked with him about it, and he said he spilled it on purpose. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we stop this here? Because I don't.
Well, I think that kind of goes a little bit back with what Megan said about the extinction burst. I mean, not nearly to that extent, but sometimes they're kind of testing the waters here, you know, like, why is she telling me I'm doing a good job? So I think the more that you can, again, be consistent with that and telling him that, he's going to realize, you know, that, oh, okay, maybe she just means that I'm doing a good job. She doesn't have some ulterior motive here, you know, and
Right.
things like that. So,
Okay.
Megan, do you have any further comment on that?
That's exactly what I was thinking. If the ulterior motive, especially if he's not used to hearing you say that, and he might know still, even though it's a positive statement, he might recognize, hey, she's giving me attention. If I spill this water, if you were to either reprimand or acknowledge that, then that's lots and lots of attention for him. So he might know, well, she's going to keep giving me attention, even if she's yelling at me. So I like this positive comment. Let's kind of act out a little bit more. It really depends on how you respond. If you if you ignore that behavior that's not as serious, and he sees he didn't get anything out of you, and then as soon as he's doing what he's supposed to do, provide reinforcement for that again, eventually he'll start to see that spilling that water, you didn't even flinch. There's no point. There's no reason to spill the water in the future. But that's the good part. It's for everybody.
Yeah, so he's learning. The other thing too, sometimes we see is kids almost feel like they don't deserve that praise. I mean, I think all of us as adults go through times like that too. And so, you know, it could be part of that where he's, again, testing it, trying to figure out, well, why would she say that I'm doing something good? All I'm doing is not doing something bad, you know? So just kind of continuing on, like Megan said, and hopefully you'll start seeing that, okay, you're really reinforcing those things that you want. And the more that you can ignore those problem behaviors, he'll get used to it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I do see some of that where I can, you know, give him that positive reinforcement, and there'll be lots of times where he will not have an issue. But it's always those times where I'm going to the bathroom, I'm doing the dishes. It's always at a time when I have to stay busy doing what I'm doing, or it's just not going to get done. And this has been a struggle most of his life. So he understands full well how frustrating it is for me to have to stop 20 times,
right?
Quite literally, just, you know, to deal with him beating the crap out of his sister, and, you know, my dishes aren't done or my dinner's getting burned, and it's like, it's really frustrating. So
it sounds a bit like the extinction burst too. So what used to work to get your attention, he's kind of upping the ante to try to get your attention. And once it leads to those dangerous behaviors like hitting the sibling, that's the tough part, when I recommend consulting with the professional or BCBA, because it can get more serious. But if it's simpler behaviors like spilling the water, those are a lot easier to ignore than those more serious ones.
Yeah, my daughter has permission to go and hide herself in her room and lock her door, so that way, you know, she's separate from him until I can get to the situation. So.
Yeah, it's good having those plans in place too. So, yeah, I know. Other comments, questions, suggestions for Emily?
Yes, please.
I think you talked about how you were doing dishes, and that's when a lot of behaviors are occurring. I think if you can establish, like, okay, your son's name is Dallas, right? Dallas. Okay, Dallas, I want maybe trying to increase some of the duration. He's probably got a lot of fun things that he likes, and like maybe kind of setting the expectation, like, okay, I'm going to do dishes right now. I want you to play with this for 5 minutes, and maybe even adding like a visual timer to it. and saying, okay, I want you to play with this for 5 minutes using that visual timer. You get 5 minutes of dishes done, and then you come back and provide him reinforcement and verbal praise or some time playing with him. So kind of using a little bit of structure there when you're doing the dishes, of kind of creating some lengthening of duration of his play, and kind of putting an expectation of like, okay, you do this for 5 minutes while I'm doing dishes, then I'm going to come play with you. You know, that might be a good strategy to use during something like dishes.
Okay.
Tiffany, I like that. I've never heard that. I always try to feed the meter. That's good.
Here, I'm going to unmute you, Tiffany, so you can, do you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah, that was a trick I learned a long time ago. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's better.
Okay, sorry, I had headphones on. That's a trick I learned, is feeding the meter. Is basically like, you know, when you go park your car, you put a bunch of quarters in until you're done parking there. Well, if I want my son to leave me alone, then I try to do something before I want him to do that, or let him know, you know, ahead of time, I'm going to be doing this, and then when I'm done, we can do this. And timers work really great on my son. He loves that.
Oh,
Great.
excellent. All right, I'm going to mute you again. Just okay. Anyone else?
Emily,
Jen,
has he?
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead,
I
sir.
was just wondering, has Dallas ever shown interest in doing dishes alongside you? Say you taught him how to dry the spoons and forks and where they go. If you could pull him into some of those activities, I mean, it might not, you know, not anything big, but if he might be able to engage that way, you can be teaching him some new skills like putting the silverware away or drying the dishes. Is that something that you could also give him attention while he's also helping you out? You can both be done sooner, you know, with the dishes.
Okay. Because I have my other two girls working on dishes right now. So I'm kind of teaching them a little bit more with that. My 11-year-old does the dishes, but she needs some help. My 7-year-old does dishes, and she's pretty good with it. So, I mean, that is something that I could get him to try to help me with. He loves the sprayer, and unfortunately the sprayer sticks. So, you know, it's one of those, I know he wants to play with that sprayer and help, and I can let him do that. So that's, you know, I can do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, and if your sprayer, what'd you say?
Just bring out some extra towels. In case
Yes,
he gets through away.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and if your sprayer is sticking too much, maybe get a spray bottle that he can spray with it or something, you know, so get creative, like Travis said. Yeah.
You could make, has anyone ever played that game at Chuck E. Cheese, the fireman game, where you've got to aim the water right directly at, you know, at that little hole, and you win? You could make a game out of it, you know, the less water, you know, the better you aim water, here, we're winning the game, that kind of stuff.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good, guys. Any other comments? Questions? No? Okay. Well, I think this, you guys did a great job going over the instructional control. And I know there were some questions about sending the slides. So we will send the PowerPoint to everybody. Yeah, that will help. And the this video should be up on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. So if you missed the beginning, you can go back and see it. Just looking to see if there's anything else. Just you guys gave some really good examples. So next week is going to be even more on kind of empowering you guys as parents and helping with that control some more. So, all right. If we don't have anything else, I think we can get on with our day, and we'll see you all next week. And
Thanks
feel
for
free
joining.
to share the link.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.